Hello, friends. Today we are going to be focusing on haiku poetry. Hopefully at this point you have your guided notes open in front of you so that you can follow along and fill them in as we go. So, what is a haiku? Hopefully most of us are already kind of familiar with this form of poetry. A haiku is very simple. It's a 3-line poem with 17 syllables. And the way that gets broken down is that the first line has 5 syllables, the second line has 7, and then the third line has 5 more. So it goes 5, 7, 5. Haikus usually focus on nature, simplicity, and intensity. Because these poems are so short, they really have to convey a lot of information and not very many words. So to provide you with a little bit of history, haikus began in 13th century Japan. They used to be kind of like an opening or an introduction to a much longer 100 stanza poem. In Japanese, sound units are called moras, and these don't translate well into English, which is why instead of counting moras, we count syllables, right? If we think for a minute about the Japanese language, it is structurally and phonetically completely different from English. So it doesn't make sense to count moras if we're going to translate it into English, right? Because those things don't really line up. That's why we focus on syllables. The style of haikus has changed over time, and usually haikus focus on a brief moment in time, and they use colorful imagery to convey whatever it is they're talking about. So this is an example of a haiku that was written in Japanese and then was translated into English. Okay, so I'm going to read it one time through and then we'll count the syllables. An old pond. A frog jumps in, the sound of water, by Matsuo Basho. Okay, so this meets all the criteria of a haiku, right? It is 3 lines, right? We'll count the syllables in a second, and it focuses on nature and simplicity, right? It's just one very quick snapshot in time. A pond, a frog jumping into the water, and the sound of that. If we try to count the syllables, I have an old pond. Okay, that would be, hold on, let me get my pen. That's 3 syllables, right? An old pond. Okay, then in my next one, I have a frog jumps in. That's 4. And in my last one, I have the sound of water. That's also 4. Okay, but again, because this was translated from Japanese into English, it's not going to follow the 5-7-5 pattern. Okay? When we see one that was written in English to begin with, okay, we have a more accurate syllable count. So I'm going to read this one time through. White caps on the bay, a broken signboard banging, in the April wind, by Richard Wright. Again, right, this meets all the same criteria of a haiku. It's 3 lines. Okay, we're going to count the syllables in a second, and it focuses in on one moment in time, right? You're at the bay, looking at the waves, and there's a loud sign banging in the wind. Okay, you can see this whole picture of like what this poet is looking at just from these 3 lines. So if we go through and we count the syllables, white caps on the bay, I have 5. Okay, and then we move on to our next line. A broken signboard banging. Okay, that's 7. And then lastly, in the April wind. That's 5. Okay, and so this haiku, because it was written in English, meets our syllable requirement. So it's important, maybe if you're on a test or something, and I give you a haiku that says, originally written in Japanese, right, then you're going to know that the syllable count is not going to line up like it does right now. Okay? That's it for haikus. Very short, sweet, and to the point. If you have your notes open in front of you and you scroll down, you'll see that there's an assignment. What I would like you to do is to create an original haiku poem about a place that you will visit on spring break. I know that we are in quarantine, okay? So I want you to be creative. Think about maybe some of the things you've seen. Hopefully you're getting outside a little bit. Maybe when you're on a walk, you can write about your backyard. Write about your living room. Maybe there's a park on the corner that you haven't been to in a long time. Maybe you look out the window every day and stare at the beach and wait for it to open back up. I know I do. You can also write about a place you've never been but that you would like to visit. Okay, again, don't overthink this. It's 3 lines. Okay, so you really want to convey as much detail as possible in just 3 lines. Okay, vivid imagery is important. Think about how whatever it is you're describing, how it looks, how it smells, maybe how it tastes, how it sounds, how it feels, and most importantly, count your syllables. Okay, you need to have 5 syllables in the first line, 7 in the second, and 5 in the third. Okay, and you can write your haiku literally right here on your note sheet. You've got it.